Good morning, good afternoon, good night, guys. I really need my coffee here now because I've been covering the tragic, violent earthquake that has happened in Taiwan during the night. So I didn't have much sleep, and after this video, I want to make another update about what's going on in Taiwan. If you're interested in that, check out the videos later on in my end screen. But let's talk about Iceland right now. There are quite a few news today about my friend the Blue Lagoon, just small news. And of course, what's going on with the press, the fight of the press against the state. There's some news there. And then a little bit what's going on with the magma and where the magma is coming from. So it's going to be an interesting one. So stay with me, guys. Let's start with the Blue Lagoon. So the news is not really big. It's just been that last night around midnight, there was some gas pollution in the Blue Lagoon and around the Blue Lagoon. So it was sulfur pollution that had been measured there. And since we still have a constant activity in two craters that are not showing any sign of slowing down, and we still have lava flowing mostly in an easterly direction, of course, we still have the sulfur gas pollution, and it depends on where the wind is flowing. And then, of course, an area can get it quite on short notice. But the Blue Lagoon is still closed. It was evacuated when the eruption began, and since then it has been closed because that eruption has been going on, I believe, for 19 days right now, 19 days. So temporarily around midnight, they did have a problem, but not for long. It's gone now, but it doesn't really matter, as I just said, since it is closed, and it's been blown over Grindavik as well. So this is on and off. It's flowing to Grindavik. It's flowing in this direction. It's flowing through Swartsengi. Of course, I mean, the eruption is right there. The eruption is very close to Swartsengi, and that's where the magma chamber is. The magma chamber is underneath Swartsengi, the power plant, and the Blue Lagoon. So no surprise that we see some pollution there. The head of the deformation measurements at the Icelandic Meteorological Office, Benedict Gunnar of Feiksson, he thinks that, or he confirms what we've been already thinking for the last few days, and scientists have said it. He said that the magma that is flowing out now in the eruption is coming from a deeper magma reservoir. It's not coming from the shallow lying magma chamber that has been filling up and releasing during the last 4 months. So right now it's coming right deep from the magma reservoir, and it's flowing through everything. And he thinks it's coming from a depth of at least 15 kilometers. And there are still no signs that this eruption at the Sutnuka crater series is ending. That's what he is saying. And that's why he says, from what it was looking yesterday when he had a look at the eruption, it seems to be stable as of now. And he doesn't see that it would slow down. He doesn't see any indication that it's slowing down. He says it seems to be balanced. And what does he mean with that is that the flow that comes from the deeper magma reservoir is just enough so that it can flow through the system and can flow right out. So it's not that big that it would fill the magma chamber as well and put pressure there. It's just gradually flowing out very, very smoothly. It's not too much pressure, but also not too little, so that the eruption would stop or die down. That's what they mean with balance. And that land deformation underneath Swartsengi is balanced too right now. So we see no land rise, but we also don't see that the land is subsiding, because normally it was like the magma chamber is filling up to the point of maximum elasticity, and then it causes an event, an intrusion or an eruption. But once the intrusion or eruption happened and the magma's flowing out, the land was subsiding. Of course, it's like blowing air into a balloon, and then if you let air out, it's getting smaller, it's subsiding. So we don't see any of that. That means it seems to be balanced. So it's not doing anything in any direction. So that's what he means with balanced. And he thinks, since it's so flat right now, that it is pretty stable. He says, you know, There are no signs that this eruption is going to end soon, but he says you also have to be very careful with such speculations. And he said it can stop immediately and it doesn't need any announcement for stopping, right? So it can, and nobody knows when, as it seems right now. And he says, because this flow is so stable and because he thinks that this is coming from a lower magma reservoir, that there is no magma that is accumulating in the upper chamber here. So he thinks it's flowing right through. And he is really, really sure that it's definitely coming from this larger magma reservoir. But he's saying that there will be an analysis, a chemical analysis of the magma very soon. And then they will know more where it's coming from. So it seems they can at least analyze that and give us more indication, because they can compare it to what lava was coming out, what magma was coming out in the past eruptions. So it seems that they have a way to analyze this. And he says he thinks it's coming from a depth of at least 10 kilometers or maybe even deeper than 15 kilometers. He's comparing the current eruption with the Fagradalsfjall eruptions that we have seen in 2021, because he says there are no decisive signs that there is a deformation in the Earth's crust right now, neither subsidence or land rise. And that was similar at Fagradalsfjall. There wasn't much subsidence until about 2 months after the eruption ended. And that could be similar here, because when we saw the last eruptions that occurred here in December, in January, and February, the land started to subside. But these eruptions have ended more quickly. So it seems that it is still possible that the land will subside, but as he said, could be weeks or a month after the eruption has ended. He was also asked, why does this eruption last longer than the other 3 eruptions? This is the 4th eruption in the Sutnuka crater series in the last 4 months, but the other ones, the first 3 eruptions only lasted for a few days, and this eruptions, we're going into day 19 right now. And he says, well, it's hard to say, right? We can't really say what's the reason, and it could be just the way this system is developing. And he says there are some complex conditions in the Earth's crust that control how this eruption is going and is occurring, and we simply do not have any measuring methods or measurements that can tell us what exactly is that system or what is going on there. And he says it is just the development of the systems, and systems like this don't always behave in the same way, and it does gradually develop in a certain direction, and sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly. So basically everything's possible. That's how it sounds to me. Because like Thorwald, and he's also a volcanologist, he said last week that he believed that this activity, this eruption, this volcanic activity in the Sutnuka crater series would completely end when this eruption ends. So he thinks this chain of events that we've been seeing for the last 4 months will be over. And Benedict of Feixen comments to Thorwaldur's comment, and he says, well, I'm not really sure what exactly he has in mind. It may very well be true, but we can't say anything about it, right? So we have this situation again that it is speculation on the scientists' side, but that's all they can do. The science just isn't progressed any further. This is just not these scientists. If you bring in other scientists, they will probably say the same, because just the measures that you have are not invented or produced yet. And that's why many volcanologists are saying we know more about what's going on the moon than what's going on inside our Earth. And that's why we gotta wait and see what happens, I guess. So in light of what has been going on the Reykjanes Peninsula, they want to increase the land stewardship on the Reykjanes Peninsula. So the Minister of Environment, Energy and Climate has decided to provide increased funding for the land management of especially like the tourist attractions, the geysers, and just everything on the Reykjanes Peninsula. And why? And that is interesting because they're always complaining about something else. So he says the events on the Reykjanes Peninsula in the recent years, these multiple eruptions, the earthquakes, have been accompanied by an increase in tourist traffic through an area that is sometimes vulnerable and not without danger. Since there are still no indications of a reduction in the level of these earth disturbances in the near future, that's why he says he has agreed to provide increased funding for land management at the eruption sites so that it is possible to respond to increased traffic in the area in the long run. And he says in another statement that these eruptions have increased the number of visitors to the Reykjanes Peninsula dramatically. So on the other hand, they're always saying that worldwide the press is covering these eruptions in a negative way, which has been leading up to reduced bookings and stuff like this. So they were kind of blaming the international press for causing monetary damages to them. But it seems like it's the opposite is the case, right? It seems that these eruptions are drawing tourists and adventure adrenaline junkies that want to swim in a pool, in an artificial pool right underneath the magma chamber, and that want to be evacuated in the middle of the night while they're sleeping. I'm just kidding, guys, but it's the reality. It's what's actually happening. And I'm sure the Blue Lagoon will be open quite soon again, but a good thing is they can't while the eruption is still ongoing because of the sulfur gas. So at least they have to wait this one out. So they want to have more rangers that, you know, have the traditional ranger task. They have to educate visitors. They have to monitor sensitive nature. They're working together with the emergency responders and the police. So that has been working in the past. And now for 2 years, they want to hire more staff, and then they will reevaluate after 2 years. So yeah, why not, right? If tourist industry is booming, I guess that's good. We just always have to hope that they are careful enough. But, you know, the civil defense and the police, they have been careful. They have evacuated Grindavik, and then they really have received sort of a shitstorm for not letting people in, for not letting press in, for not letting residents back in. They have been more cautious, and now they have been kind of been forced to open it all up again, but they still said, residents, you're on your own. We do not recommend staying in Grindavik overnight. We do not recommend to have anyone in the areas that are basically mapped out at the Icelandic Meteorological Office's hazard map. So you can't really blame them. They want to be careful, but they have a lot of pressure from tourist industry, from politicians, from residents. And speaking of that, we know that early on, after the first earthquake swarms hit Grindavik and Grindavik had to be evacuated, there was some press guy, I think it was one guy or two, that went into the town and then were caught when they were trying to enter a private home in Grindavik to snoop around. I don't think to steal anything. They probably just wanted to take pictures of the damage of the homes and how it looked inside. But of course, the residents felt violated. They were evacuated. They couldn't access their homes. And then some guy just, you know, takes pictures for the press inside their homes. So that was critical. So the police chief of Sodorns was acting in favor of the residents and just closed it down, said no press. And they were only like in the coming weeks and months, like scheduled dates where the press could enter the town. And the press was very upset about this. They said, we need to have access. What is the reason? What is the base for this to leave us out? Because we're covering dangerous things all over the world. Why can't we go in there and cover the cracks and the damages? And then the residents are saying, well, you know, the state is violating our civil rights by, you know, closing us out of our own home. We own these properties. We have a right to be there. And why can't we be there while some press guys walking around freely along the cracks and the sinkholes and the damages? And of course they have a point too. So the press did file a court case against the state. And I really thought they would have let that go, because since a few weeks, basically really the police chief of Sudurns has caved and has opened it again. And the last few weeks, it was announced residents can go back freely to the town, businesses can go back freely to the town, and the press has the same rights as the residents when it comes to being allowed to enter the town of Grindavik. So there was no problem anymore. But it seems the press wants to make sure that it's not just regarding Grindavik. They want to have a rule for future events, how this is going to be handled with the access for the press. And I think that's why they're moving forward with this case. And there have been ongoing discussions between the Journalists Association of Iceland and the Ministry of Justice. And it could result that they're really moving forward with a court case against the state regarding the accessibility issues, and that all issues will be dropped. But they're still in the stage of like hearings and discussions. And that's why the chairman of the Journalist Association has said that, you know, the judge has encouraged them, let's talk to each other, find a solution, that the Journalist Association and the ministry have started a conversation with the aim of reaching an agreement on the issue of access to journalists. So tomorrow, a hearing will be held in the case before the Reykjavik District Court. And the journalists are saying that they're hopeful that an agreement will be reached. The aim is for it to be successful tomorrow so that they can solve the issue for good tomorrow. So what do they want in this agreement? The Journalists Association says, you know, that they hope that this agreement will provide the journalists with the necessary access to dangerous areas in the future. So we're not only talking about Grindavik or the Reykjanes Peninsula, there might be other eruptions or catastrophes, unfortunately, right? Avalanches is a high risk in Iceland as well. So they want to know, they want it specified on which legal grounds journalists have been prevented from entering Grindavik. So when the first eruptions happened, and these restrictions that have been placed by the police chief, Olfa Ludvigsson, regarding the access for journalists to Grindavik and to the eruption sites, to the areas around the ongoing eruptions, the journalists demand that all restrictions on their staff that is responsible for Grindavik also will be lifted. So since they have filed this court case, the police chief has removed most of these barriers, and they did have a way easier access to the areas also outside of Grindavik. But they wanted, I guess they wanted on paper that they have something they can rely on should there be another problem in the future where their access is restricted. So I will keep you updated about that as well, guys. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I'll zip my coffee. I'm really tired. So thanks, guys. Leave this video a like. That would be awesome. And if you're new here, thanks so much for watching and staying till the end. And if you want to be on the pulse with me on a regular basis, it would be awesome if you could subscribe. And check out here in the end screen, these are my updates about what has happened in Taiwan with this terrible 7.5 magnitude earthquake. So thanks for watching, guys. Another update is coming soon. I see you. Bye-bye.